In 2017, as we sat at the base of the lighthouse, the oldest, most historic structure in this county, I was at the cusp of launching what has been one of the largest engaged art projects I've ever created, which is the underwater. It is a project that helps people understand their climate vulnerability by having them find the elevation of their home on an app and then posting that on a yard sign in front of their homes. And through different iterations of that process of finding the elevation of a place and finding weird ways of communicating that so that it piques people's curiosity, so that they question what a number 4 in your front yard means, has allowed me to develop other projects where I paint intersections, where I create aluminum cutouts for county halls, where I wrap buses, electric buses with elevations. It's been a process to communicate the dire situation that Miami-Dade County is in, and I do that because most of Miami-Dade County is unaware of just how vulnerable they are. Scientists predict that by the end of the century, if we continue to act the way we are acting now, oceans will rise by 6, 7 feet. Half of Miami-Dade County and places way inland from the bay are below that elevation. Those are people's homes and livelihoods, but they are duped by all the progress, all the cranes, all the success that they see. They feel that climate is not a real issue because they see people investing in Miami, because they go on Zillow and they see that property values continue going up. And what I try to make them aware of is that there are different people with different thresholds, risk thresholds at the table. There are investors who have a return on investment within the 2 or 3 years it takes them to build a structure, a tower. And as soon as they sell it, their risk disappears. There are others who are willing to weather a little bit of risk, knowing that they can flip those condos in time because they have a broader portfolio, because they have other resources. It's not like a lot of people living in the western and southern parts of this county whose nest egg, whose largest source of family wealth is the equity in their home. And for those individuals, I try to make the invisible visible. I try to allow them to understand that in the years to come, there are going to be consequences by our failure to act. And those could have really hard economic results for a middle class or a low-income family. I also want our communities as a whole to understand that there will be winners and losers, that there will be places with higher density and higher property value, financial districts, things with high rises that are probably going to have the kind of tax base that will allow those properties to have a longer life than areas that are at lower elevations, that aren't as dense, that don't have the kind of tax base that could help them adapt to the rising seas. And the reason I do that is because I'm looking at equity. I'm wanting people to find a solution today that is thought out and planned and, deliberated about body politic, as opposed to the chaos that will come when the sea levels are lapping at your doorstep. And that socially engaged process of raising awareness, of making people aware, is something that I care passionately about because I care about and love this community. I'm also aware that there are opportunities that exist when you are at ground zero, that because we are so threatened, we have a duty to innovate and resolve. We know this from many experiences, for instance, in the Caribbean Basin in Cuba, where you have no choice but to innovate because there's no other way of finding food or finding a solution to a problem. So you you come up with solutions, but you need to be aware that the problem exists before you can dive in to solve the problem. And what I want Miamians to understand is that there is a problem, but that they have agency, and then they have an ability to do something about it. But we all need to be aligned in our way of thinking. We need to realize that there's a threat. We need to have constituents that reward policymakers at the ballot box if those policymakers are cognizant of the threat and begin to do something, to invest in infrastructure, in mitigation, and adaptation to address that issue, so that the suffering will be less in the years to come. So that, to me, is my life work, is my challenge. The same way that as a young boy I saw a guy named Father Lorena, Father Lorena is the Jesuit priest who I created a drug rehab center with in Miami. Father Roman, who was a really important Cuban priest who oversaw the creation of Our Lady of Charity Shrine, a really important, iconic place for Cuban Americans, particularly in the 70s as I saw that building go up. There was a sense of community and a sense of we're in this together and we're going to support one another and advocate for the political prisoners and share the stories of the persecution and try to figure out how to build community in this unstable place. Well, it's sort of with that in my DNA, and living in a community of Haitian immigrants who came to Miami's shores as I was in high school, living in a community of exiles from drug wars and civil wars and authoritarian regimes across the Caribbean basin, that we know how to help and support one another. We know how to come together when things get tough. And I've seen us do that as Miamians when a hurricane comes. I remember being with migrant workers in the aftermath of Hurricane Andrew, trying to help rebuild the communities around Centro Campesino and in Naranja and in South Dade. I remember how when a problem threatens us, we try to come together to solve it. And I want us to understand that the problem is here so that we can begin to work together. And I believe that Miami, this global city, this city that has trade, that has a jurisprudence, a system of predictability so that you'd want to invest on it, a city that is an epicenter for culture, one of the 3 cultural centers in the United States, the site of incredible creativity. A place like Miami is not just a place that's situated on a map, but it's a place that is perfectly situated to address our climate future because it's aware, it's ground zero, but it has all of this resources that can be channeled to try to find climate solutions. And if the body politic, supported by constituents who reward the elected officials, begin to understand the opportunity that we have in Miami, then not only can we help Miami save itself, or at least navigate through the chaos to come, but we can show the rest of the world how coastal communities who are threatened by rising seas can face this catastrophe that threatens to destroy nation states, to bring in famine and the kind of climate migration that will cause billions to suffer. And if we in Miami can understand our place in this moment at this time to solve that, then there's a new movement that can happen in Miami. There's a cultural movement, a Miami cultural movement that can help not just reflect upon or serve as a witness to a catastrophe that's happening, but that can use the power of art to address and change and challenge that uncertain future and convene, inspire, and mobilize society to bring about a better solution, a better future. And that, to me, is what I find to be missing in our society today. That ability to understand our vulnerability. We're good at denying it, assuming that it's not our problem, assuming that it's someone else's problem to solve. So we're really good at deflecting, at denying that there's a problem or that we can be part of the solution. And if we can understand our power to see and respond differently, then I think our humanity, our inability, our humanity and our ability to innovate and to think and to create will blossom in ways that few times in human civilization have we been able to do that, because collectively, and that's the hard part, we can inspire, support, and motivate one another to bring about change. Since time immemorial, we've done that. We've gathered as groups and hunted and gathered better. We've found ways of communicating and inspire the people who we habitate with to do things. But as we got bigger and as society got more complex, there's less sense of ownership or agency. And we have gotten to a point in our society with almost 8 billion people on this planet where it's impossible for us to understand that we have a role and an ability to effectuate change. And what I think art does is art is like that little stone that David had against the Goliath, that breaks through that spectacle, that puts us in this, this mode of inaction, and can inspire us to see through and begin to effectuate change. And that is why I have many degrees and many titles, and the only one that matters is artist, because it's the ability to use art to communicate complex ideas, to reframe the way we think, to imagine different futures, to bring others into that conversation that can really save us.